She was born in 1993 in Norfolk, Virginia. Her parents were Christopher and Samantha Ingram. She grew up in Arkansas and later went to Arkansas State University for higher education. After graduating, Turner moved to California and eventually to Las Vegas, Nevada. She wanted to build a career in modeling and acting. She started with lingerie and swimsuit modeling. This work led to appearances in well-known magazines like Playboy Italia and Maxim. Even with professional success, Turner's personal life took a troubling path that drew national attention. In March 2019, Turner, her boyfriend John Logan Kennison, and their housemate Diana Nicole Pena were involved in an incident that ended the life of Dr. Thomas Kirk Burchard. He was 71 years old and a respected child psychiatrist from Salinas, California. Burchard had been financially supporting Turner. He paid her rent for a home in Las Vegas where Turner lived with Kennison and Pena. Their relationship had a sugar daddy dynamic. Over the years, Dr. Burchard had reportedly given Turner hundreds of thousands of dollars. Some sources estimate as much as $500,000 to cover her rent, cars, and personal expenses. Things turned sour when Burchard decided to stop supporting Turner. Authorities believe this decision triggered the events that followed. The incident happened after an argument escalated. Turner reportedly told Kennison to knock Dr. Burchard out. Kennison then struck Burchard with a baseball bat. According to witness testimony, Pena saw Kennison come out of the room covered in red stains and described the scene as pure terror. A broken door, red stains, and scattered cleaning supplies were later found inside the house, matching the evidence recovered from Turner's car. Burchard passed from his injuries. His body was placed in the trunk of Turner's Mercedes-Benz and left on a remote desert road near Lake Mead, just outside Las Vegas. Investigators later recovered the car abandoned on a dirt road, where a baseball bat and cleaning rags were found alongside fingerprints belonging to both Kennison and Pena. The scene was cleaned, and the three left for California. Pena later helped authorities by sharing important information. This led to Turner and Kennison being arrested. Turner was caught in Stockton, California, on March 21, 2019, by the FBI and Las Vegas police. Investigators also discovered that Turner had forged Burchard's signature on documents to access his money. This showed she had taken advantage of his generosity. Phone records revealed that after Burchard's life was taken, all three suspects' devices went dark around the same time, a deliberate effort to avoid being tracked. At the scene, authorities found red stains, cleaning supplies, and items with Kennison's name. These details suggested they tried to cover up what happened. In July 2022, Kennison admitted to second-degree manslaughter, using a dangerous object, and planning the incident with Turner. He received a sentence of 18 to 45 years in prison. In November 2022, Turner accepted an Alford plea. This meant she did not admit guilt, but recognized that prosecutors had enough evidence to likely prove the charges. On January 10, 2023, she was sentenced to 10 to 25 years in prison for her role. During sentencing, Judy Earp, Dr. Burchard's longtime partner, gave a heartfelt statement. She called Turner a consummate liar and spoke about the deep loss felt by everyone who knew and loved Dr. Burchard. The next model built her fame on beauty and luxury. But behind those Miami high-rise walls, police say something far darker was happening. Courtney Clenny, also known online as Courtney Taylor, was born in 1996 in Midland, Texas. When she was 7, her family moved to Austin. She grew up there and spent most of her childhood in the city. From an early age, Clenny was passionate about fitness and modeling. She started sharing her work on social media and quickly gained attention. Her accounts on Instagram and OnlyFans attracted a large following, and she earned a significant income. Online, she presented a glamorous lifestyle. However, her personal life was more complicated behind the scenes. In April 2022, Clenny became involved in a serious incident that brought her into the public eye. She was arrested and charged with ending the life of her boyfriend, Christian Obumseli, in Miami. The events leading to this situation were complicated and involved a long history of tense interactions between the two. Obumseli was a 27-year-old tech entrepreneur. He had been in a relationship with Clenny for about 2 years. Friends and family described their relationship as unstable. There were frequent arguments, and both parties reportedly had moments of aggression. In the weeks before the incident, neighbors said they often heard loud disputes coming from their apartment. Clenny had also been arrested for a domestic incident in Las Vegas, but those charges were later dropped. On the day of the incident, Clenny said she acted in self-protection. She claimed Obumseli had targeted her, and she threw a sharp object at him from about 10 feet away. However, the Miami-Dade medical examiner's office reported that the wound that ended his life was a deep, downward strike. This did not match Clenny's description of the event. The prosecution argued that the wound suggested it was done on purpose, rather than by accident. Clenny's defense presented a different story. They said her actions were a reaction to ongoing fear and mistreatment. They showed video footage of object-throwing demonstrations on pig carcasses to explain that the injury could happen from a distance. Experts said the sharp tool could have caused the wound in a way similar to Clenny's account. The defense also shared information about Obumseli's alleged harmful behavior. They said Clenny had tried to get help, including requesting a protective order. The prosecution disagreed. They said Clenny's actions were intentional. They pointed to the seriousness of the wound and the fact that Obumseli had no defensive injuries. They argued this showed he was not an immediate threat. The case sparked discussions about domestic conflicts, self-protection, and complicated relationships. As of October 2025, Clenny is still in custody and waiting for her trial. The court process has been delayed several times because of motions and legal challenges. A trial date has been set, but the outcome is still unknown. She faces a serious charge, and if the court finds her responsible, she could face many years in prison. In the next case, what began as an unresolved story from her past would end deep inside an Ohio forest. Chelsea Perkins was a 35-year-old woman from Alexandria, Virginia. Her life moved between public service and online fame. She served in the U.S. Coast Guard and later built a following as an adult content creator under the name Sabrina Savage. Her online image showed confidence and success, but behind it was a story marked by anger, disappointment, and a search for closure. In 2017, Perkins made serious allegations against Matthew Dunmier, a man she had known since high school. The case was never resolved, and the lack of closure stayed with her for years. Friends later said she struggled to move on from what happened back then. On March 6, 2021, Perkins drove more than 300 miles from Virginia to Ohio. She told others she was going to meet Dunmier. They spent the night together at an Airbnb in Cleveland. The next morning, she drove him to Cuyahoga Valley National Park in Valley View, Ohio. The two hiked through wooded trails, past a cemetery and into a secluded area. That is where something irreversible took place. After leaving the park, Perkins drove to Michigan. There, she went to a tattoo shop and got a noose inked onto her forearm, a choice that investigators would later call symbolic, before returning to Virginia. When Dunmier was reported missing, investigators began tracing their movements. Surveillance footage, phone data, and location records helped them piece together the timeline. Authorities later discovered that Perkins had created a fabricated message on her phone that appeared to be written by Dunmier, but was actually made around the same time he vanished, an effort to change how events would appear afterward. Federal agents searched her home in Virginia and found 3 9mm handguns. One, found inside a purse with her photo ID, tested positive for her DNA and matched the ammunition used at the scene. After months of investigation, Perkins was taken into custody in December 2021. She was originally facing the highest possible charge, but later agreed to a plea deal. In May 2025, she accepted responsibility for her role in what happened and entered a guilty plea. During her hearing, Perkins told the court, "I take full responsibility for what I've done." She received a sentence of 22.5 years in federal custody, followed by 5 years of supervised release. The next victim paid more than $11,000 for a custom experience. What happened inside that room was far from what either expected. Michaela Rylaarsdam was an adult content creator and a mother of 3. She ran a side business selling paid clips and custom sessions for her followers. She used social media to promote her work. Michaela was married, and court filings and news coverage indicate she managed some of her online work with her husband. She combined family life with a public, paid adult persona. This contrast made the case attract attention when it became public. On April 17, 2023, Michaela traveled to Escondido, near San Diego. She went there for a session with a 56-year-old man named Michael Dale. He had paid her more than $11,000 for a custom fetish session. What was supposed to be a negotiated paid encounter went tragically wrong. Police described the scene as extreme. The man's limbs and neck were wrapped in cling wrap. His mouth was covered with tape. A plastic bag was placed over his head and secured with tape. There were extra layers of cling wrap and adhesive. The San Diego County Medical Examiner said the cause was asphyxia and listed it as a homicide. Authorities said videos on Michaela's phone were key to the case. Investigators found recordings that appeared to show the man struggling while wrapped and taped. The videos also showed Michaela recording for her account while he remained still. According to reports, the videos lasted several minutes, and the bag stayed on his head for at least 8 minutes. The medical examiner said this was long enough to stop the brain from getting essential oxygen. Michaela denies putting the bag over his head. Her lawyer said the activities were agreed upon and that she did not intend to take his life. But prosecutors focus on the video evidence and what was found at the scene. Text messages between Michaela and the client show he asked to be wrapped like a mummy, to have women's boots glued to his feet, and even to have adhesive poured over his eyes. The documents say he was visibly intoxicated when Michaela arrived. Witnesses later said they heard him call out during the session, asking for the activity to stop. Investigators found that his arms and legs were bound. Some witnesses said he offered to pay more money to stop before emergency services were called. The combination of intoxication, restrictive bindings, and coverings that blocked breathing created a dangerous situation. Prosecutors charged Michaela with homicide rather than treating it as an accident. They said the evidence shows the man did not ask for the bag to be secured over his head. Video footage captured her recording as his breathing became difficult. The prosecution argues this shows actions that went beyond simple carelessness. The defense says there was no intent to harm and that any fatal outcome was an accident during a risky but agreed-upon session. The trial will focus on whether her actions were reckless or purposeful. First responders arrived to find Michaela performing CPR. She called emergency services after realizing how serious the situation was. She later gave her phone to the police. The man was taken to a hospital and declared brain dead. He was removed from life support a few days later. It took almost 2 years from the encounter before an arrest was made. In February 2025, Michaela was taken into custody. She was charged with homicide and booked at a San Diego detention center. She has been held without bail while legal proceedings continue. The next individual had modeled for Calvin Klein and Levi's. Hours later, detectives were taking photographs of his hands for evidence. And if you find stories like these important, consider subscribing. Dina Saxon first appeared in public as a young model. He was seen on runway cards and in glossy magazines. He had worked with well-known brands and attended high-profile events. Social media and stories connected him to campaigns and appearances for labels and magazines. Reports mentioned modeling work with names like Calvin Klein and Levi's, as well as fashion shoots and event coverage. For a short time, his name suggested a rising career path. He was going to castings, photo shoots, and working to build a portfolio. Like many in the industry, he had to navigate a city that rewards visibility, but asks little about private life behind the camera. That public image ended on November 10, 2024. The Bronx District Attorney's Office reported that a confrontation in the lobby of an apartment building at 384 Grand Concourse escalated. The victim, 35-year-old Kadeem Grant, was found with injuries from a sharp tool and later pronounced deceased at Lincoln Hospital. Investigators recovered surveillance footage. According to prosecutors, the video shows the defendant repeatedly using a sharp tool and continuing the act with punches, kicks, and stomps. The indictment and the DA's statement describe multiple injuries, including one to the chest that caused his end. Saxon reportedly had cuts on his hand during the incident. A sharp tool was recovered, and charges were filed. Saxon was arrested a few days after the incident. He appeared in Bronx criminal court, facing multiple charges. These included second-degree homicide, first-degree manslaughter, and illegal possession of a weapon. He was held without bail and later indicted in Bronx Supreme Court. The DA's homicide team took over the case. Court filings and announcements described the process in legal terms: arraignment, remand, and indictment. But the core facts are straightforward. Video shows the incident. One man passed, and the accused is in custody waiting for the trial. Why would a young model be involved in such a clash? The DA's report provides some context. Both Saxon and Grant went to the same apartment to visit a tenant. Saxon was reportedly asked to leave the building. This detail shows the encounter was not random. It was tied to being in the same space. Officials have not explained a clear reason for why the confrontation turned fatal. Prosecutors say the video shows the defendant starting and carrying out the act. Media reports have relied on the video timeline and neighbors who heard a short argument before Grant was found. Video surveillance is central to the case. The DA's statement points to footage showing the act and aftermath. Police found the victim with a chest injury and recovered a weapon. Saxon had visible cuts on his hand when he was taken into custody and was evaluated in a hospital. Prosecutors say these injuries match the use of the sharp tool. These physical traces, combined with video and the recovered weapon, form the main evidence. Official documents and the DA's release highlight these points. News reports from late 2024 described Saxon as a 20-year-old East Harlem resident. He had modeled for high-profile clients. He was taken into custody after the incident. His social media, which once showed modeling work and events, went private after the arrest. One management firm mentioned in posts denied formal ties. Public reaction from the modeling industry was limited to media coverage. Neighbors described the scene as disturbing and said they heard a short argument. The legal process reflects the seriousness of the charges. Saxon was arraigned and held in custody. Prosecutors pursued serious felony charges, and the case moved to indictment. The Bronx DA's office formally indicted him on second-degree homicide charges. Return dates were set so both sides could prepare for trial. As of early 2025, Saxon remained in custody. The trial had not yet started. No verdict or sentence has been reported. Regarding motive, reports and filings do not show a clear reason like theft, gang dispute, or pre-planned act. The DA has emphasized the surveillance and the severity of the act. Family members and the defense said Saxon did not remember the incident. His mother told reporters she did not believe her son could do this. These statements represent the defense perspective. Prosecutors, however, are relying on video evidence and the physical injuries, and their decision to pursue serious charges shows they believe the case is strong. The next man was a young attorney getting ready for a date. She was the ex who couldn't let go and showed up uninvited. Shaina Hubers grew up in Kentucky. She was known as a bright student. She went on to study psychology at the University of Kentucky. She graduated with honors and later pursued graduate work in school counseling. Outside school, her life was more complicated. Shaina Michelle Hubers had some modeling experience. In 2011, she posted several modeling photos on Facebook, which were shared by friends and received positive comments. She had intense relationships, marked by jealousy and emotional ups and downs. In 2011, she met Ryan Poston through mutual friends. He was 29 at the time, a lawyer, ambitious, outgoing, and described as somewhat vain. They started an on-again, off-again relationship that lasted about a year and a half. Friends and family said it swung between affection and conflict. On the night of October 12, 2012, everything changed. Ryan was at his Highland Heights condo getting ready for a date with Audrey Bolt, who was Miss Ohio USA 2012. This detail later became an important part of the case. Shaina arrived at his condo that night. Within hours, Ryan had been shot 6 times. Shaina called 911 and told dispatchers she had done it. Later that night, during police interviews, she described the shooting. In her comments, she sounded casual and even joked about giving him the nose job he always wanted. Prosecutors later used these remarks against her. The main question in the case was simple. Did Shaina act because she feared for her safety or because she could not accept that Ryan was leaving? The prosecution argued that Ryan was ending the relationship and had planned the date with Bolte. They also showed messages and testimonies suggesting Shaina was obsessed and angry rather than afraid. The defense argued a different story. They said Shaina feared for her safety because of past mistreatment. They claimed the shooting was an act of self-defense. Evidence from both sides painted a complicated picture. Text messages suggested Shaina had thought about harmful outcomes. At the same time, the defense highlighted alleged incidents of physical mistreatment to explain her state of mind. In the end, the jury sided with the prosecution. The first trial happened in 2015. After 5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Shaina guilty and recommended a 40-year term. The judge followed this and sentenced her to 40 years with parole eligibility after 20 years. That conviction did not last. An appeal found a problem. One juror had a concealed felony, which is not allowed under Kentucky law. This led the judge to grant a new trial. Shaina returned to court 3 years later. The retrial took place in 2018. The prosecution again presented the timeline, text messages, and video of Shaina's interrogation. Witnesses included former cellmates who said Shaina had talked about or joked about harming Ryan. The defense focused on her alleged history of harm. Witnesses described bruises and frightening encounters. Once again, the jury found her guilty. This time, the recommendation was harsher: life in prison. On October 18, 2018, the judge sentenced her to life with the possibility of parole after many years, based on statutory rules. Shaina is now serving this term at the Kentucky Correctional Institution for Women. She will not be eligible for parole for many years. Investigators and prosecutors built their case using physical evidence, digital records, and Shaina's own words. Forensics confirmed 6 gunshot wounds. Her 911 call and police interrogation played a major role. In the interview, she said she had shot him a couple more times because he was twitching and making funny noises. This weighed heavily against her self-defense claim. The prosecution also showed texts and testimony from friends describing her jealousy and obsession. The defense argued that her trauma had not been fully considered and highlighted the mistreatment she claimed to have suffered. Jurors had to decide if fear or calculation explained her actions, and both times they concluded it was calculation. Some moments from the investigation revealed character more than reports could. During interrogation, Shaina paced, sang, and made comments about her acting. A former cellmate testified she laughed about the incident and called it a nose job. These behaviors helped jurors understand how she reacted after the event. Prosecutors argued these moments showed she did not feel shock or remorse in the hours after the shooting. After the second conviction, appeals continued. The Kentucky Supreme Court eventually affirmed the verdict, finding the trial fair. Shaina remains in prison, with parole eligibility only years away. Ryan Poston's family has said the sentence brought some closure, though nothing can replace what they lost. Shaina's defense team has asked for leniency, highlighting her youth and mental health struggles, but the courts have not reduced her term. The next woman came into the public eye for a case that shocked people because of how detailed and extreme it was. Omima Nelson was born in Cairo and worked as a model and nanny. She moved to Southern California and found work as a model at South Coast Plaza in Costa Mesa. In her early 20s, she married William Bill Nelson, a man in his mid-50s. The marriage lasted only a few weeks before events unfolded that led to her arrest and later a life sentence. Reports described the marriage as tense and sometimes dangerous, and the large age gap between them was noted by investigators and the press. On the night of November 28, 1991, in their Costa Mesa apartment, the situation escalated into a tragedy. Prosecutors said Omima used a pair of scissors on William multiple times, which ended his life. What made the case widely known were the details that followed. Reports said the body was dismembered, the torso skinned, the head boiled, the hands fried, some parts stored in a freezer, and other pieces put through a garbage disposal. Neighbors told police they heard the disposal running for hours that night. Some reports said parts of the body were cooked, and Omima at one point told a psychiatrist she had eaten part of the ribs, though she later denied this. These details made the case unforgettable in the media. At her trial, different pictures of the events were presented. Omima's defense argued she acted in self-protection and had a history of mistreatment. She said William had physically harmed her during their short marriage and that she reacted after an aggressive episode. She described being tied up during a bondage incident and said she fought free. A psychiatrist testified that she had been in a psychotic state and may have suffered from severe stress reactions. The expert said some of the long, night-long acts could have been done in a trance-like state. The defense also noted that Omima had a traumatic childhood that may have affected her behavior. Prosecutors told a different story. They said the actions were planned and deliberate, not just sudden self-defense. They pointed to signs of preparation, such as trying to hide identity by altering the body, using a disposal, and storing parts in a freezer. Reports suggested teeth had been removed to prevent identification. Prosecutors highlighted the long duration of the acts, arguing it showed more than a one-time reaction. Jurors listened to both sides carefully during the trial. After 6 days of deliberation in January 1993, the jury found Omima guilty of second-degree homicide instead of first-degree. This meant they believed the act was intentional, but not fully pre-planned in the strict legal sense. In March 1993, the judge sentenced her to 27 years to life. She appealed later, but the appeal failed. The public and media reacted strongly. National outlets compared the case to extreme examples, and some stories referenced famous fictional or real-world cases when describing the dismemberment and cooked parts. Despite the sensational coverage, the court focused on specific evidence. The medical examiner's report, what happened in the apartment, witness statements, neighborhood observations, psychiatric testimony, and forensic findings, Omima has tried to gain early release. She first became eligible after serving the minimum sentence guidelines. She appeared before parole boards several times. In 2011, she asked for early release, apologized, and said she would try to be a good person. She claimed she was not a danger to anyone. The parole board denied her request. Prosecutors and the board concluded she had not taken full responsibility and still blamed others. She remains in state custody and cannot apply again for several more years. As for the question of whether she ate any part of William, the record is mixed. She reportedly told a PI psychiatrist that she cooked and ate some ribs, but she later denied it. The psychiatrist said her account included this claim, but outside of that, there is no undisputed court record that she ate human flesh. The jury's conviction focused on the second-degree homicide. Claims about eating parts of the body made the case notorious, but they were not the main reason for the conviction. Friends and family also gave conflicting statements during the trial. Some supported Omima's story of abuse. Others said Bill had not been aggressive, and Omima had not complained about painful or uncomfortable situations. Reports said she tried to get help to dispose of the body by offering money from a supposed safe. At least one person called the police instead, which led to her arrest a few days later. These interactions supported the prosecution's argument that the actions were deliberate. Up next is a former model, a speeding Mustang, and 3 musicians stopped at a red light. Janette Sloinsky grew up in the Chicago area. She was the daughter of Polish immigrants. From a young age, she moved between 2 different worlds. On one side were the small, steady routines of suburban life. On the other was the flash of local modeling jobs. She worked as a print model. She appeared in calendars and lingerie ads. Later, she moved to Los Angeles. There, she worked as a trade show model to pay for college. She was studying marketing. Those early years gave her a public face. Hair and makeup, photo shoots, and short-term gigs became part of her daily life. Meanwhile, the parts of her life that later mattered most stayed private and messy. Her career in modeling was modest. It was not national stardom. It was not a path to wealth. It was the kind of work people did to make ends meet while trying to figure out what came next. On July 14, 2005, a routine lunch hour in the Chicago suburbs turned into a sudden tragedy. 3 local musicians, Michael Dahlquist of the band Silkworm, Douglas Mice of the Dials, and John Glick of the Returnables, were stopped at an intersection in Skokie. Sloinsky's Ford Mustang crashed into their Honda Civic. Witnesses and investigators said the Mustang was moving very fast. Prosecutors later told the court the car reached around 87 miles per hour before impact. The collision flipped both vehicles. The 3 men passed from the injuries they sustained. Sloinsky survived but suffered a broken ankle. For the families, friends, and the local music scene, the loss was immediate and devastating. At first, the scene raised urgent questions about intent. Police reports and news coverage described how Sloinsky had left her home after an argument with her mother. Prosecutors said she left with the goal of ending her life by driving into another car. Sloinsky's statements changed over time. Sometimes she denied trying to hurt herself. Other times her accounts were inconsistent. Why would someone drive so fast into stopped traffic? The prosecution said the simplest answer was that she wanted to end her life, and the crash happened as a result. Her defense disagreed. They argued that there was not enough evidence to show she intended to cause harm. Other details came up during the case. Sloinsky had a history of mental health struggles and reported substance issues. Police and media described her as both glamorous and troubled. The charges were serious. Prosecutors first sought the most serious charges possible for each of the 3 victims. Their argument was clear. If she drove into the car on purpose while trying to end her life, her actions directly caused the loss of 3 lives. Her defense argued differently. They said the evidence suggested reckless behavior or an accident, not a deliberate act. The trial focused on motive, mental state, and physical evidence. Medical testimony, accident reconstruction, and witness statements were all considered. The court learned about the speed, the traffic lights, and Sloinsky's actions right after the crash. They also heard about her background and what she did before leaving home that day. In October 2007, a Cook County judge delivered the verdict. Janette Sloinsky was found guilty of reckless conduct but also mentally ill. The judge reduced the original charges to a lesser, but still serious offense. She was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Prosecutors had asked for 30 years, citing the high speed and the loss of 3 lives. Instead, the court considered her mental state when deciding the sentence. The judge also ordered psychiatric care, recognizing that mental health played a role in the case.